be what?
4H.
4H. Okay, now what do we need to do?
The formula for area?
Right, formula for the area of a triangle, right, which is what?
1/2 base times
1/2 base times the height, right? Okay, now what do we do?
substitute.
Substitute in
The
what?
B. The B.
The base for
4H.
4H, right? So we got to cut that base out, right? We're going to put in A equals to 1/2. And where the base was, we're going to put 4H in there, right? Times H. Okay, now what?
Multiply.
What?
Let's just distribute, it would be 4H squared.
Yeah, but can we
2H
simplify? Yeah, 2 can go into 4, right? And that's 2. And then H times H is H squared, right? So we have A equals to 2H squared, right? But is that what we want?
No.
No.
No. We want H of A, right? This is A of H. So what do we have to do? Okay, divide by 2. We're solving for H, right? So this is A over 2 equals to H squared, right? Then what? Apply square root. Apply square root. But we don't have a negative height, right? So we just drop the plus or minus. And so we've got height of A equals to, now here we can't leave that square root in the denominator, right? So what do we have to do here? Rationalize it, right? So we split it, square root of A over square root of 2, right? And then we got to multiply by square root of 2 over square root of 2. And so that gives us H of A equals to what? Square root of A2 or 2A, right? Either over 2. And that's our model. Okay? Alright. Okay, so there was also another question about domain, right? 2.7, is that right? Or was it just on radicals in general?
Well, both.
Okay, and 2.7, was there anything specific that you had a question with?
I just didn't know how to do those.
Oh, well, think of these in terms of, you have a number line, right? Here's 0. And you have this continuum from negative infinity to infinity, right? And anything with y equals x is negative infinity to infinity. Y equals x squared, negative infinity to infinity, right? Because that's going to go up and to the right and up and to the left. Y equals x cubed, because that's going to be up and to the right and down to the left. So that's going to continue on negative infinity to infinity. And then you have x to the 4th, and so on, right? Because that'll kind of squiggle around, maybe something like that. Y to x to the 5th. So any of those, it's going to kind of come around and kind of come down like that. So those are all going to be negative infinity to infinity. Okay? Now what is not negative infinity to infinity? When you have y equals to the square root of x, now here you cannot have a negative radicand, right? So here you have to set the radicand to greater than or equal to 0. Because 0, square root of 0 is just 0, right? So now it's going to be closed at whatever you get x is greater than or equal to, and that goes to the right, to infinity, right? So that'll be closed at 0 to infinity. So whatever you solve for inside that radicand, that's going to be what your domain is from that the denominator. But any other time, a radical expression is going to be negative infinity to infinity.
Well, on the online homework,
Yeah.
it says f of x equals square root of x minus square root of x plus 1. And it said 5
f of x equals to the square root of x minus
plus x square root of x minus 1.
square root of x minus 1. Okay, now here you have two square roots, right? So here you have to treat them separately. You have to look at this first one here. What's that domain? Okay? So you said x is greater than or equal to 0, right? Okay, so here's 0, and we know it's going to infinity, right? Now this one, x minus 1 is greater than or equal to 0. Solve for that, and we get x is greater than or equal to 1. Okay? So that one, if we draw it underneath here, here's 0, here's 1. Now this one, you cannot have anything less than 1. Why? Well, what if you have 0 in here for x? Then what you end up with? Negative 1, right? You get a negative radicand. So in that case, your domain cannot be anything less than what? 1, right? So therefore, that means your domain has to be from 1 to infinity. Even though this one says 0 to infinity, but you can't use 0, right? Because 0 will give you a negative radicand for the second one. So you have to look at both, and then look at the restrictions for both and apply them. Okay? So that's going to be your domain.
I think I got it.
So even
Okay.
if it said x is greater than or equal to negative 2, you would still, because it's less than 1, you
Okay.
still use.
Okay, that's a good question. Let's say here we have again. Okay, we have square root x minus, and then here we have 2 minus x, let's say. Okay? Well, we already know this one is from 0 to infinity, right? But here we have 2 minus x is greater than or equal to 0, right? So if we solve for that one, apply negative 2 to both sides, and we get negative x is greater than or equal to negative 2, and then we divide by negative 1, right? Or multiply negative 1. Well, what happens to that inequality sign?
X is less than or equal to.
Less than or equal to 2, right? So now, here's 2. Okay? And it's less than that. So therefore, we cannot have anything less than 0, right? Because that'll give us a negative. Negative 1 would give us a negative, right?